2. I'm not going to really show it up here, but I'm going to be reading off the board, and over here I have the heart. I think you can read what that says. This top one, right atrium, your tricuspid valve, your right ventricle, your pulmonary semilunar valve, right here, your valves, your left atrium, your bicuspid valve, your left ventricle is here, and then you have your aortic semilunar valve, okay? So first things first, I don't know how I'm gonna stand. I'll stand here. So your AV valves are gonna be, so your AV valves are gonna be open, okay? So your AV, and whenever you see the word AV valve, it's talking about your atrium and your ventricle. That's what the V, so atrium and your ventricle valves, so that's what these are. So those are open, okay? These semilunar valves are closed. So we're gonna close those and these are gonna be open. So when you think about it, blood is gonna be moving from your atrium to your ventricle, so that's why it's open, okay? 70% of blood passively flows from the atria into the ventricle. So it's just gonna be like, it's gonna drip, drip, drip. 70% of your blood that is in here is just gonna drip into your ventricle. Nothing contracting yet, none of it. It's just gonna drip. Eventually, your ventricle is gonna increase in pressure, and this will trigger the atrium to contract. So this is like milking the cow, right? You're gonna contract. They're gonna contract, okay? But this is triggered, this contraction is triggered by the SA node. The SA node is just a place of electric impulse in the heart. Maybe I'll find a video that can help explain this a little bit better. The SA node just kind of like is what triggers contraction. So it's where all the electric is pulsated from. So the SA node fires, the atrias contract. It's going to contract. When this contracts, it's going to squeeze blood through the tricuspid valve into the ventricle. Okay. When the atria contracts, remember when we had the PQRS complex? When the atrias contract, that is the P wave, right? That's where that is. Make sense? Okay. The ventricles, so when you think about when the atria are contracting, the ventricles are relaxing because they're just filling with blood. So contraction, relaxation. Okay? The AV nodes are open, these are closed because we're getting blood from the atria to the ventricle. So these need to be open, but this is closed up because it's just filling. Next we have, in your next little section, so this is where we are right now. You see what I mean? I'm kind of going through this. Okay. Next, we're going to go from ventricular contraction, also known as systole, because right, you have your systolic and your diastolic. We're going to go to systolic, because whenever you hear systolic or diastolic, you're talking about the ventricles. So this is, now we're going to be looking at the QRS complex, which is this right here. I don't know if you can see that. Okay. So we're going to scroll down. So when the ventricles contract, so remember we said this contracts and the ventricles relax, right? So when one contracts, this needs to relax. But when the ventricles contract to push blood out of the ventricles, to push it out, the atrias are going to relax, because when these are pushing blood out of them, the atrias are going to be filling up with blood. This atria is going to fill up with blood from the vena cavas. Does that make sense? So while one relaxes, the other one needs to contract. Yes, okay, I said that right. So when you look at number 1, okay, number 1, it says, the ventricles are now full, and they are as full as they can be. They're like a balloon, and your ventricles, they don't want to burst, right? So they're going to contract. I want to make sure I'm saying this right. These AV valves, so when the ventricles contract, so when this squeezes, You want those valve, the tricuspid valve, and because this is happening on the same side of the heart at the same time. When this contracts, you want this valve to close so blood flows out through this way, right? Because you want blood to go to your lungs. If this was open and this contracted, blood would just back up into your atria. You don't want that. So when the ventricle contracts, you're pushing blood out, you're going to shut these. So this is going to shut, blood is going to flow this way. Because blood doesn't know which way to flow. When the AV valves, when they snap close, so it's going to close up, they snap close with chordae tendineae, okay? And you know, like when you hear, if you listen to a heartbeat, you hear the lub-dub, 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 right? That lub that's what you're hearing, are these valves closing. When those close, when those atrial ventricular valves, AV valves, when those close, that's your lub. Isn't that interesting? It's just when they close. I found that fascinating. Those semilunar valves are now open.
So when they're closing, that's the
lub.
Yep. The depth is when the bottom one's opening.
When the bottom one's actually closed.
They're closing.
Because they will close. So, yeah. Yes. Yeah. So that was the QRS complex. Is this making sense so far? Okay. And I'll give you these answers. Whenever we heard, so systole is when the ventricles contract. Diastole or diastole is when they relax, right? Okay. Right, yes. This makes sense. So now we're going to be talking about the T wave, which is right here. This is the T wave, this last bump. This is when your ventricles are going to relax. This is called diastole. So your ventricles are now empty, right? So your ventricles contracted, pushed blood out. Now they're empty, okay? So now these, just trying to go in order, these valves, since these are empty, these valves are going to snap closed. So the pulmonary semilunar valves are going to snap closed. Same thing with the aortic at the same time. That is your dub, is when those snap closed. That is that sound you're hearing is when those valves close. Okay? And when these valves close, your ventricle is going to be just relaxing. And when this is relaxing, this valve is going to open up again. And then blood is just going to drip through from the right atrium to the right ventricle. Does that make sense? Okay, so this last part, AV valve opens up and the semilunar valve closes. 70% of blood flows passively, so it's just going to drip passively from the atrium to the ventricle. And then pressure in the ventricle is going to increase, and then your atrium is going to squeeze out that 30%, that remaining amount of blood in there. It's going to squeeze that out, and it's going to go into the ventricle. And it'll start filling up again, and this process will repeat. So this next sentence says, these above events occur on the right side of the heart. And now it says we'll include the left side for fun. So what really happens is that you're going to fill this out at the same time, but we're going to now include the left side of the heart. Because I was talking about only the right side, but when one goes, right, you're milking the cow. It's going to go. One contract, the other ones do too. So we're going to go through it again. It's the same thing. It's going to feel really repetitive, but I think it'll help reinforce it at least. So you're going to have it dripping. It's going to be dripping again, right? 70% is going to drip through, right? The ventricles, and it's going to be dripping through both now. I'm talking about both. I don't know what this hand motion is. The ventricles are relaxed, so they're just relaxed. And these are just, they're just there. They don't really do, they're relaxed too, but the ventricles are relaxed and everything is just dripping through. Remember, though, if this is dripping through and blood is collecting in here, what's happening with the valves?
The top ones are open and the bottom ones are closed.
Right, because we're collecting blood in the ventricles. So these are going to be open up here, and these are going to be closed. So you're not going to have those. Okay? And then eventually, Your ventricles are going to sense. They're going to be like, okay, we're full enough. Your atria are going to contract. This is your P wave. When the atrium contracts, blood goes through. That's the P wave. Next up, you have your QRS complex. Okay, remember, electric impulse, muscle response. So technically, it's actually P wave, and then they contract. I kind of messed that up. So you have QRS complex. So you're going to have that firing, that big bunch of electric is going to fire, and this is going to cause now your ventricles contract. When your ventricles contract, where's blood going to flow? Where does blood want to go?
Out.
Okay, it's going to go out. So these are going to be open. The pulmonary semilunar valve, because it's going to your lungs, right? It's going to your lungs. The aortic semilunar valve is going to the rest of your body, right? So these are going to contract. The bicuspid and the tricuspid valve, also known as your atrial ventricular valves,